everyone, welcome to another Tuesday morning. We're very excited to have Iain Galloway on here to talk about HoverGames. Iain, tell us what is HoverGames and what's the new news?
Well, so this is going to be HoverGames 3, actually. So we've had two others before this, HoverGames 1 and 2, obviously. HoverGames 1 it's about a coding challenge for drones. So HoverGames 1, we did fight fires with flyers, and we used drones to really see what could be done to help first responders, or use drones in a new and innovative ways to sense fires. There was some amazing stuff that came out of that. And, it's not always the most obvious or the most highest tech result that matters. It's some of the great insights that I'd like to go back to is how, we have a drone, this HoverGames drone, which is a reference design. Here's one that's kind of in pieces, but yeah. So, but it's meant as a low-cost development tool for people working with drone code PX4, and then to add on top of that. And some of the best results came from the fact that they kept things low cost. You're not talking about adding tons and tons of extra processing on top of it. And for example, we sensed fires by providing a very simple thermal element. And because the drone could go back and forth, you could generate really accurate heat maps, or accurate enough for use by a firefighter. And some of that's what makes the difference. When you've got a solution that costs, $300 to $500 instead of $3,000 or $5,000, that makes a big difference to what, say, fire departments can use. And there was all kinds of really cool we like to keep these contests fairly open in terms of what the challenge is, or what the actual details of the challenge are, and give them sort of an overarching societal challenge like this fight fires with flyers. So we did this one. That was great, very successful. We've done a second one, which was help drones help others during pandemics. That was HoverGames 2. And in that, and so we got lots of really interesting things, like and it was a difficult time, of course. So the winner ended up, I'll go back to the winner in a minute, but a lot of it was seeing how busy a park was, or how busy a particular walkway was, because people were all concerned about the pandemic at the time. Delivering medicine to people, grandparents that lived out in the country, those kinds of solutions. And then the winner, actually, because they did a fantastic job, they were helping farmers at the time with the fact that it was hard to get labor for farms. And they had a system that would identify feral pigs that were coming on the lawn and onto their property and chase them away. So it's still related. We're kind of pretty loosely related to the pandemic, but it was part of the issue at the time. We had labor shortages. We had, challenges knowing how safe it was to go to certain areas and things like that. So, the whole concept is we're trying to help figure out how we can come up with ideas that can help others using drones. And so it kind of sparked our creativity for the next one, which is HoverGames 3. And we're calling that HoverGames 3 Land, Sky, and Food Supply. And
I love it.
It's quite broad, and it's always hard to come up with sort of rhyming titles. But it's quite broad, and what we mean here is, can we use drones to help out not just farming, but farming and food supply issues? So that could be actual crops. It could be pollinating trees, but it could also be fish farming. It could have something to do with, wildlife conservation, or bees, or, people that hunt deer for those sorts of things, fishing, but also other stuff around that. It could be delivering a test kit, a soil test kit, to someone that is in a remote village or something like that. We want to make sure you're not constrained by the contest rules or the contest itself, but more what kinds of interesting ideas can you come up with to help in this area. And so we want to be a lot of innovation. Now, and with HoverGames 3, we're actually introducing a buggy. So we're actually kind of calling it, colloquially we call it rover games as well. So hover games, rover games, but it's because not everybody can fly a drone. But we've been able to come up with a buggy package. So it uses all the same, so we got the drone with our flight controller here on top, PX4 flight controller, and now we're introducing a buggy platform. And I can share a screen and perhaps.
Hopefully it's not a buggy platform. Sorry, I had to say that.
Buggy 3. Yeah, you should. Yeah, Buggy 3.
Cool.
Yeah, we did that on purpose. So I could share a screen if
yeah.
Let me show
it should
you
be at
here.
the bottom of your screen there.
Share the computer, share a screen, and I can.
I'm really excited about this. I was going to ask if there's ever, because there is specific hardware that is supported in these contests, and like so far it's always been aerial drones, UAVs, and now
and what we found was, it's difficult for people to always fly a drone depending on where they are, and we can do a lot of the same things with PX4 on a buggy, and we've allowed a lot of space here in the middle for additional compute hardware, which I'll talk about in a minute. So this is showing our flight controller with a Pixie cam, and we do use this in some other contests, like we have a NXP Cup in Europe that they do sort of trying to drive around tracks with this buggy now. It's a pretty, we picked it, so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel in terms of platform, so we picked a nice platform that's, pretty rugged. It's all FCC CE approved, etc., and you can get replaceable parts. So, but that brings to the next big excitement with this challenge is we're introducing another new compute platform called NavQ Plus.
Whoa.
And NavQ Plus is based on our IMX8M Plus processor.
Oh, yeah.
And that big claim to fame is it's in the IMX family, and it has dual. I can also share a slide here on that.
Oh, yeah. Because I
so
haven't heard about this.
Will be unreleased. It's not this. People that play in HoverGames will be the first to get access to it, and
this is really cool. Exclusives.
Where did we go here? There we go. I'll just make that big, and
this is such a powerful set of systems for edge computing. Cool to have them on vehicles.
So NavQ Plus, it's a mission computer, and so we'll be running an Ubuntu demo image on top of our Yocto Linux image. And Yocto, we use NXP is mostly supplying commercial, industrial, medical customers, and that's why we focus on Yocto, because they need a very carefully and constrained build of Linux. So it's great for deployment. It's great for you're making 500,000 coffee makers or something like that, or medical devices, but not so great for your average developer wanting to play with Python and add things with apt-get, etc. So we've added an Ubuntu desktop image on top of this, and then enabled our tools, like we have things, vision tools and whatnot. So it can support two cameras. We only are supplying one with it. It has dual USB, which is up to 20 volt input. So we got a 20 volt input also on the side here separately with all these, drone code PX4 connectors. So dual camera, dual Ethernet, dual CAN bus. So these are the CAN buses on the side.
I heard you saying that in one of the videos about this. Yeah, tell us about the two CAN buses.
Yeah. And then it's a whole host of other features that really make it suitable for mobile robotic applications. Like
that's so interesting.
Here we go. We've Wi-Fi on board and Bluetooth 5. We include an edge lock secure element. So one of our secure elements is called SE050. The reason we do that, and we do it on all of our mobile robotics development boards, is there's a lot of interest in like the board, the chip itself our IMX chips are built and they can be fully locked down and secured, right? I mean, they're designed that way from the beginning. And so even internally, I get like, why did you add a secure element to a part that's already secure? And the reason is you don't necessarily want to be, you may have a secure Linux and system and boot up, but what you're trying to do is something like, I want to authenticate this pilot on this drone, or I want to make this board work with these 5 other boards and get them to share credentials between these 5 boards. And while it could be done with the built-in secure system, this is so much more universal. And this same secure element is on other PickTalk boards, for example.
I figure
so
that's why they call it edge lock, right? Is because it's sort of at the interface between the board and like other devices and other people.
Right. And it has the NFC interface, which is really cool. So the idea is, now this is all software that's in development, but the idea is, you've got your system built and now you got to swap out a motor controller or something, right? So you take your cell phone, touch it on an NFC and say, okay, this motor controller has the same keys or authentication as this flight controller, and now they're all able to work together in a system.
Cool.
Stuff like that. Or the same thing with your credentials and your badge. You say, I'm allowed to fly this. I'm the chief firefighter. I'm allowed to fly this drone in this area that's normally restricted. So I click on my authentication and that lets me fly.
Cool. There's even stuff you could do with like localizing it to a specific area. So, within agricultural systems, there's often like you don't want cross contamination. And so being able to sort of restrict it to certain areas.
Anytime you need like a key of some kind, like a authentication or security key to control something, like, you could say, I'm only allowed access based on this key to this area.
Cool. Oh, that's really nice.
And then there's other features here, like, again, for robotics, like this real-time clock with tamper detection. So this is a high-precision real-time clock that we make with a crystal built in, and it's got tamper time stamping. So even if the thing is off, somebody starts opening something and they break a switch open or close, it can record that timestamp, and that the system has been tampered with. Now, of course, for developers on the desk, it doesn't matter, but there's definitely use cases, right, where you're saying, we don't want anybody to tamper with this thing, or our robot, or we want to know when it's been opened or closed or whatever, or when somebody's gotten into a certain area. So that's one of the features here with this real-time clock. And the chip itself has PCIe, so we have a little option for PCIe expansion, and then it also supports displays. So even though this is meant, we're intending this for a drone companion computer, running NavQ, Nav2 and ROS and mapping and all that kind of stuff. This could easily be in a ground station.
Yeah,
right? So you can put a little display and a couple of joysticks next to it, and it could be the ground controller for a drone or something completely different, a bucket truck or a robot dump truck or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
But what I haven't said yet is right here at the top, it's got also on board a 2.3 TOPS neural net accelerator. And so now you can do machine learning, AI, teraops per second. Yeah. And this, it sounds like a lot. It's not a huge amount, but it's a pretty good amount. And that's kind of the difference, right? That's where NXP's sweet spot is like this edge compute, where I can't afford to put a PC at the edge. I don't have hundreds of watts of power. I don't even have 50 watts of power. I mean, this chip, when it's full out doing everything, is something in the order of 5 watts maximum, and typically it's 2 watts.
Dang.
So now you're talking about, you can do vision and video and AI and, extract features and do it all in a very power efficient manner, and that's suitable for a drone or other rover. And
I love the idea of combining that with the stereo vision, where you can like really get really specific about what you're looking at and do some really smart stuff on it. I think there's so much that you're kind of limited by having a single camera and having two just like, and they're not, you can mount them however you want. You could do a 360, you could do a stereo vision, you could, you could have them dynamically focus at different, okay. Anyway, you
Yeah,
were
there's
saying.
a lot of capability here, and then I'm just having the whole small form factor and like lots
Uh-huh.
of little connectors. Another thing we didn't mention yet was this use of. Let me go back to the other picture here. So these two connectors are the Ethernet, and there's
Mm.
something you might notice about it is like, what's this Ethernet connector? Okay.
What is
So
it,
I can
Ian?
tell you first I'll tell you about this. This is only a 2-pin Ethernet connector. So what we've done is we
What?
added our automotive 2-wire Ethernet. So it's 100 megabits per second over two wires. You just twist the wires together and you can go up to 15 meters. And it's fantastic for these types of applications or anywhere you don't want to have the big bulky Ethernet connector, or you're in a built up system. It's just you can run this wire anywhere, and that'll plug
Wow.
directly into our flight controller, which also has 2-wire Ethernet. Oops.
2-wire
In
Ethernet,
one of
that
these.
sounds like so much less of a pain than your standard, imagine being in the field trying to
Yeah,
set something up and
and,
you've got these
and
horrible
it's right. Yeah,
like 16
this one
wires,
here.
whatever.
And I mean, and it's built for that sort of thing, right? It's not like you're trying to take
Mm.
regular Ethernet and put it over the wrong types of mismatching connectors and things like that. T1 Ethernet is
Mm.
designed for this 2-wire only. So that's that
Nice.
connector. But the other connector, the funny silver one, is going to be new to a lot of people. It's called IX Industrial.
Hmm.
And the difference is right here. Maybe you can put me back.
Oh, yeah.
Here it is physically. So here's I'm not very good at orienting. There's regular Ethernet, right? The
Right.
RJ45, and it's plastic to begin with. Yeah, everybody
Mhm.
knows they break off the tab, and it's pretty good, but it's not rugged like this new industrial connector.
Mm.
And you'll notice this is a single cable, and it just translates from one to the other. Now,
Hmm.
apart from the housing itself, the actual connector is tiny. It's more like a large USB,
Mm.
right? If you look at them in comparison.
Yeah.
So it's smaller, it's more rugged, it's metal, and certainly on the board, on the circuit board, you can see it's way smaller than if you put a big
Yeah.
RJ45 block.
You can see
And
it
and
sort of
that's
next to some other connectors. Are those USB-C connectors right there?
These are USB-C, so it's not much bigger than a
Wow,
USB-C
it's so
connector.
small.
And if this was an RJ45, it would take up that whole corner of the board. It would
Yeah.
be just that whole area would be
Huh.
just the RJ45 connector.
Just since you've
So we're getting into a
paused
lot
and
of
mentioned
detail
these
about
things.
the parts, but get a lot of detail here about the parts, but it's
Uh-huh.
kind of fun. In the future, we have some other things, like we said, there is PCIe expansion capability on this board. It
Yeah.
doesn't come with it for HoverGames, but it is something that can be added later. Time of flight vision cameras we're working on.
Mm.
With the PCIe adapter, you could add other like a hard drive if you had storage of a lot of data, or you could add another neural net accelerator from different companies like
Oh
Google
my.
Coral, stuff like that. And I think we kind of went over everything else, like
That's
UART
really
on these nice
awesome.
drone code connectors, NFC connector. Oh, HDMI. It actually has an HDMI output, so you get a
Cool.
whole desktop if you plug in the into a monitor. And we do
And like you
ship
mentioned, you
all.
have that desktop layer of Ubuntu, was it, on top of the Yocto?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So
yeah.
it makes it very friendly for developers and for
Hmm.
HoverGames in particular, right? If you're trying to do something or build a neural net or whatever, we have these EIQ tools, they're called, to do
Hmm.
the neural net, adapting the neural nets to this board, specifically this embedded neural net accelerator, and that makes the job way easy. So you can still do all your normal TensorFlow and things like that, and it'll do Onyx translation and things. So it's built for this board, and it just means you have a normal working environment, right? And a normal Linux machine is what it looks like. We also
Cool.
we'll ship with a little USB-C, breakout adapter, so you have another Ethernet. You can plug in a mouse and a keyboard if you want to, a regular, that kind of stuff.
Nice. I think
And
you mentioned somewhere that it comes with a debugger as well?
oh, so this board, the Linux board doesn't come with a debugger or doesn't need a debugger. I mean, you can you can plug in a debugger, sorry, on one of these headers. Where'd it go? It's somewhere here. There's a debug header. I've lost it though. There, this one, right there. That's a normal JTAG debugger interface. The drone or the buggy, it does come with a debugger, and that same debugger could be used here, but typically you're not going to need it on the Linux machine, right? The Linux machine, you can just put your U-boot, you put the image, the U-boot and file system on an SD card and pop it in, and it'll boot up. And you know, it's only if you're starting to do really, really low level stuff that you'll need the debugger.
Right.
But the same debugger that's used on the flight controller here. So it plugs on, I can't see. One of these. There we go. Debug. There.
Oh, there we go.
So this connector is actually way bigger than you might expect because it's got the debug interface, but it also has a complete separate UART. So you can, you know, being a microcontroller, and you might want to see like, did it actually boot up, and you know, did it get past line number 3 in your code? With a debugger and a UART here, yeah, there you go. You can see exactly if there was something really low level. You can always see what's going on. You can see the full boot up process. Whereas without the debugger, you can make changes and program it to it, and then use printf and show stuff on a console. But you know, if it doesn't get to that point, then you're toast. And if it does get to that point, you still might want to like do some more deeper probing, and that's for our more heavy duty, you know, typical embedded engineers and things like that.
I want to point out the beautiful design on here. You've got these cool little sci-fi Star Wars motifs, graphical motifs on here. This is super good. I love gratuitous design bonuses.
Accoutrement.
Yeah, there we go. We do have a question here from Naveen, who says, does the NPU accelerator support custom models, for example, trained using Edge Impulse, the neural processing?
So yeah, that's right. It's our EIQ tools. So the best way to make sure or understand is you use EIQ, and you can most models that you can generate are in various standard formats, and then you may need to do one conversion step to make it match the use on the NPU accelerator. Yeah, nice. So things like TensorFlow Lite, etc. And so I haven't done an example specifically with Edge Impulse, but I don't see a reason it wouldn't work. You know, and we leave it up to the participants to have that fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. There's so much different stuff we could talk about here. What are some of your favorite? Actually, let's do some sort of hard numbers. First off, do we have? Well, we may or may not have these numbers yet. I realize that it's not launching just yet, but do you have an idea of like when the contest is going to launch and end?
Sure. Yep. Yeah. As with everything, even being a chip supplier, we're having challenges with chip supply. There's one part on here that is from another manufacturer that when it was $3 when we built it, when we designed it, and now the brokers want $350 for that chip.
Yikes! Wow! I was gonna say, are you joking? But like, I know you're not. But
no, I'm not joking. So it's basically not available. So we've been struggling with a few of those details, but we're getting in a really good position now. And our intention is to launch in September, and nice. we'll know a bit better. You know, as time every day that goes by, we're a bit closer to being able to pull the trigger in September. And we are going to probably have to limit this one quite a lot. You know, usually we wanted to basically have as many people as possible, and now we're kind of being constrained by how many NavQ pluses we can get. Although people can use, there's no reason you can't use a NavQ from a previous HoverGames and reuse all that stuff. Yeah. That's definitely the case. So you can reuse your nav queue from the previous contest.
And yeah, if you
So we're
participate
looking
in
for
that,
really good, the better the contributions are, the requests for hardware contributions on Hackster, we're really going to have to scrutinize it heavily this time because of the challenges in having enough boards for people.
all right, better bring your A game.
Bring your A game.
Yeah, and like you were mentioning, they don't necessarily have to adhere super strictly to the sustainable food. Like, for example, in the last one, it was about pandemics, but as you mentioned, one of the grand prize winners was focused on making sure that there was a food supply, and it doesn't have to be like the obvious choice for sustainable food, but it looks like you are looking for criteria around what would be a really stellar submission.
Yeah, that's a good thing to restate. So I mean, because I did talk about it really quickly initially.
You did, yeah.
The idea, so the title of HoverGames 3 is Land, Sky, and Food Supply, and just like the other one we had where it was help drones help others during pandemics, what we ended up with was there was a inordinate number of people that sort of focused down on one very specific topic there. And we want to make sure it's clear that if you can tell a story and it ties into this theme in any way, it's totally acceptable. And we encourage that creativity. So yeah, mental health in pandemics,
All
measuring
kinds of different
thermal
stuff here.
spaces. Yeah, so even back, that was one where somebody did something for first responders because in the pandemic one, because they have troubles, right? It was part of the problem that arose. It was harder to get support, and they needed, it's harder to get labor and people on the eyes and ears on the ground and things like that. So what I'm hoping with HoverGames 3, Land, Sky, and Food Supplies, we have people not just doing so you could do crops, you could view crops from the air and look for disease. But you could also have a buggy that drives along a row of potatoes and just tries to identify certain types of bugs and use it as data collection, right? I mean, that's what science is about, is you find out what's going on in your environment and you can address it another way. So, be creative like that. Fish farming and try to figure out the health of the fish, or like one of my favorite stories with drones. I'm going to go off tangent here, but
please.
So one of my favorite stories of drones is around, so this issue is, I think it was in Washington, I don't know the exact spot, where they were having a problem that black-footed ferrets had a form of, I don't know, some horrible disease that was, reducing their population. It was something like I don't know, the plague or something, but in ferrets. And
look at them.
So there we go. So they were trying to save these guys, and the solution, but they couldn't. So they thought, well, we can't even get to them. We don't even know. It's over hundreds of thousands of acres of land that they live.
Right.
So what they ended up doing was taking M&Ms or something similar. They coated them with this vaccine. They used a drone to just more or less sprinkle these M&Ms over 100,000 acres.
Yeah.
And then marmots would eat the M&Ms, and the ferrets would eat the marmots. And
oh my gosh!
So that's a really kind of a innovative, cool solution, right? It's not sort of direct. You don't say, I'm going to go find a ferret and track it and then trap it and fix and give it an injection. It's like, let's figure out an easier way that's kind of takes advantage of the cool things that drones and rovers can do. So that's the sort of thing I'm hoping we see in HoverGames 3, where it could be direct. It could be like, I'm directly going to check on the health of plants, or I'm directly going to look at sheep or make sure they don't go astray or something like that. But it could also be, I'm going to help pollinate trees, or I'm going to take a soil test kit and fly it somewhere, or I don't know what. I mean, drive out and do soil samples regularly. Those are the kinds of things that and it might be something I haven't even mentioned, like something really unusual that a farmer or somebody in the food supply chain needs some information, needs some data, and that drones and rovers can help with that. I mean, it could be, I don't know, taking the temperature of chickens from the air or something. It could be crazy
I'm really
stuff.
curious about, yeah, specifically because I've heard about like birds attacking drones, and I'm wondering if like are there any what if someone wanted to make like a modified physically modified version of the drone that would be like
Oh
somehow
yeah,
less activating to the animals? Is that
sure,
something that would be
yeah.
included?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anything like that would be appropriate. Like if you know the let's say the proposal was something like we're going to make drones disturb animals less so that we can use them for something.
Mm,
It'd be totally acceptable. Yeah, it'd be a totally kind of entry that we'd be interested in.
love
And
that.
and then the other part is I did say a lot about farming and even fishing, but I also want to make sure we include like things that are involved with our ecosystem. So maybe because it's part of the overall food ecosystem, maybe you're just protecting a forest or something about knowing when cherry blossoms are in cherry trees are in blossom
Mm.
or something related, like we need to save the marmots because they're part of a bigger ecosystem. The marmots or the
Right.
black-footed ferrets. Yeah.
There's all kinds of interesting stuff with fungi going on, like fungi for all kinds of
Yeah.
different uses and microbes for
Yeah.
different uses and interesting like there's some types that only grow in old growth rainforests, for example. We've got some more
Yeah.
questions here. Um,
Sure.
let's start near the top. Can we use the stereo cameras with the SBC like Oak D Light? I mean, I guess that's more about like, this kit comes with specific single board
Yeah.
computers, right?
Well, so we are including one Google Coral Cam. The
Mm.
board itself can handle dual cameras. Uh, the software we provide does not do stereo vision out of the box, but it's
Ah.
something that we can work on as a group. It's very HoverGames has also been very collaborative over the course. We're not trying to, we're competitors, but we're friendly competitors. So we try to provide as much help as possible to each other.
It really
So I'm
seems like the
not,
goal is more about building stuff together and
yeah,
making
yeah,
progress.
yeah.
Um, Eric asks, could this maybe do some obstacle avoidance using ML? Don't see why not.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's kind of the cool thing. Um, the idea is, you've got a neural net accelerator. You can certainly do object detection, and then based on that object detection, you can do vision algorithms to say there is something here, and then you can do classification and object detection or classification with the neural net accelerator to say, yeah, that is a human, or that's a moose, or for that matter, that's a ladybug on a plant or a caterpillar,
Mm.
and then use that to either avoid the object or for other purposes, I guess, as well, right? So we're working to bring up the nav2 algorithms inside of ROS2, and
Mm.
that'll be, it's pretty I won't say, I'm not going to say it's easy. I'm just going to say it's pretty normal stuff inside of ROS2, and so that'll, we can run that as navigation algorithms if you want to. But there's plenty of other stuff to do as well.
Cool. We've also got a question about will the games be expanding into autonomous ocean vehicles? And we do have some
Oh,
comments from Ginger Zhang, who is on our team and is involved in running the contest.
autonomous ocean garbage
But
robots.
yeah,
I really do like the idea. I've always wanted to, there's beautiful, pristine lakes and things where it's so disheartening when you see like, and just because
mm,
they're near a city, you end up like, Coke cans and miscellaneous garbage just floating on the edge. And it's like, that seems like an easy cleanup, right? Even just around
yeah,
where there's water near cities or a marina or something like that. Just have it go around and do some fairly generic cleaning up of things, because I love this idea of drones and rovers and boats that are inexpensive enough that you don't have one of them, you can maybe have 100 of them, right? So if you can prove
mm,
that It goes out onto the beach and picks up one piece of plastic, and maybe that takes 15 minutes. But if you have 100 drones and they're doing it every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day, all of a sudden you get a perfectly clean beach, right? So to answer the question, it's not on our immediate horizon. I would love for it to be on the horizon. we would need a kit for a ocean vehicle to use and be part of I don't know what we call it, HoverGames, rover games, and water games or something. Ocean games. Yeah.
Cool. And of course, there's other applications for marine conservation. Someday, maybe. But yeah, right now there's the exciting new thing right now is the rover kit. And so, you know, we've got a drone kit, got a rover kit. To do that, we need like another.
You'd have to take the rover and put big paddles on the wheels or something. Right?
I mean, maybe you could.
It's 4-wheel drive, so.
Yeah, George, you could do this for this contest. Get the buggy and put some paddles on it.
Yeah.
Just do a lot of waterproofing on there, I guess. Pot it in resin or something. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. So there's a couple other procedural things. So I believe that as with previous contests, you wouldn't have to have your design be fully public. You can have it be unlisted, like some of these folks have.
We do have that option. I mean, it's nice to sort of share as much as you can, and then you know, it's sort of get the ideas out there, and we do need to see code and things like that. Our team does. Whatever you create.
I should say unlisted doesn't mean that it's not public. It just means that it's not like searchable in the interface. So if you're working on something but you're not sure that it's like ready for prime time, it will be public, but it doesn't have to be published.
I just realized I need to mention one other thing that's very important about this HoverGames 3. We have Bosch coming in as a partner. And they are providing a part called a Bmw 688, which is it's a combination sensor. So it has gas sensing and some, I can't remember if it has other air quality and things like that. But the key part of this is it itself also has. The gas is the 4-in-1 air quality and specific gas sensing, but it also has its own AI system for edge compute on very much on that device. And so this Bmw Ai Studio, and the idea that there is you can use this sensor to, like, one example they give is like you can tell between coffee and water, right? It can smell that this is coffee versus water. Now, in a farming application, there's some things that immediately come to mind, like, I don't know, manure from cows, or maybe certain trees give off, you know, smells or volatiles depending on what they're doing. A cherry tree in blossom has a nice smell, or a jasmine, or something like that. So you have a way to incorporate this into your HoverGames 3 challenge and use it to detect things.
This is really
I had a really great interaction. Yeah, really great interaction with a company that does this commercially, and they were using drones to fly. They flew a grid pattern over landfills, like garbage landfill sites, in order to confirm that the process of decomposition was happening. You know, they were composting and things like that. So they would fly over in a grid, and very much like the that heat sensing example, because they were flying in a grid, then they could then sort of pinpoint, even though you kind of get you imagine like a sensor, whatever, 20 feet up in the air is only going to detect a big bubble of stuff, right? But the more times you go over the same area, if you know your position, you can then sort of narrow down, saying, okay, well, this area is giving off gases that show the composting is happening really well, and that area isn't. So like it lets people go out and find or figure out what's wrong or what needs to change with the composting in that area.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of cool things you can do with these amazing new sensors.
Yeah, and even one of the previous in this pandemic one, we had the whole fight fire with flyers contest, and then did the pandemic one, and even in the pandemic
Yeah.
one, one of the winners was someone who was detecting fires, for example.
Yeah.
Huge, obvious application for this one in particular. And then, of course, there's like some weeds in particular that give off different types of smells, terpenes, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, huh? Depending on what you're trying to grow.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I would say like the other thing to keep in mind is with HoverGames, obviously the more complete a story you give, the better. We're not
Mm.
necessarily saying everything needs to work perfectly technically. This is more like proof of concept. And so, we would, to give an example, fighting fires, we would accept, it's nice if you can detect the heat or you can detect the flames, but we'd also accept the fact that you could detect an orange spot on the ground and say, this represents fire, and I will have a sensor that can detect that. Now I'm going to do some other specific algorithm or something that's new and innovative, right?
Mm.
You can do this as a proof of concept. You can say, I'm able to drive my rover down a hedgerow and find ladybugs, and just as long as you can show, you don't necessarily have to do it in that exact environment. You can show some analog of that.
Right.
Idea. Like, you're going to hold up a ladybug picture and I can detect ladybugs. And you're going to hold up this worm and it can tell that worm from that worm, something like that. Or, sorry, anything caterpillar worm.
Oh, give these
Give
worms
give
too.
as best technical solution as possible, but also the story around it and the thought process, the details of how you how it work is really also important, and that's usually very much outlined in the rules and where we have a rubric for scoring things. So you don't want to forget about that, the way things get scored.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so George mentions has a couple of questions around the sort of procedure, and you said that. Did you say it was okay to like show a quick peek of the contest page? Just like don't.
Sure. Yeah, really
Okay,
quick.
cool.
It's not
Really
officially
quick sneak
published,
peek. It's not published yet, but like look at this beautiful page that we have coming
but
up for you. It'll have all that information as soon as the challenge is live. Um, what you can do, tech you'll use, and then like all the judging criteria and stuff like that will be up on this page.
right,
Okay, I'm gonna put that away now
right.
because we're not supposed to.
And so we'll once we have a firm date, which should be September. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
the same as previously, where people, you apply for hardware, you get a big discount coupon on any of the
Mm-hmm.
hardware you need, and we go from there. We do a selection criteria, and the people that win, they join the contest. If you think you have all the hardware you need, you can just join the contest. You don't necessarily need um, like if you have a NavQ, you don't necessarily have to get a NavQ Plus, right? Or
Mm.
things like that.
And these systems are very flexible. So you mentioned before that the rover has a whole sort of middle level there that
Yeah,
is
yeah,
could be dedicated to a companion computer. The drone also has this like Rails connector where you can kind of expand it with your own hardware, right?
yeah. So again, sorry, this one's kind of in bits and pieces, but it's a good example. We keep adding, they keep getting added to and taken off. So there's a
Mm.
mount in the front. So this is a standard rail mount, and a lot of people made things that would hang off the bottom and actuator arms or sensors. This platform is all available for things like a camera mount or something like yours.
Mm.
Actually, here's a camera mount I was working on.
Ah, nice.
Right,
Oh
so,
yeah.
and we designed this kind of like a GoPro type
Oh,
thing,
cool.
and but yeah, you can add anything you want here. People have even opened up this. Where am I? On camera. Opened up this center section and made more layers up. Made a big pancake of stuff. There's a
Whoa.
lot of
Interesting.
modifications that are available, and I've done my best also and a lot of other people have put like source files, like 3D printable things on Thingiverse.
Thingiverse, yeah.
I think there's also some on, well, I don't know about Turbo Squid, but darn it, what's the other? 3D
Is it
grab
like
can.
grab cat or yeah?
But we tend to have put a few things on. Well, we put anything we can. We publish. So even actually, I think the case. The case for the FMU is on Thingiverse. There's reinforced landing gear because sometimes people have mishaps and drop out of the sky. Need a new part. So lots of really cool things that can be printed and added and modified.
Cool. We have one more question from George. Oh, not that one. Actually, it was from Eric about what's the recommended IDE in tech stack, and this is covered in the kit page, I think, where it talks about a little bit about that, but also.
Yeah. So for the flight controller itself, the FMU K66, it's a PX4 compatible flight controller. So the right way for the way to use that is just follow the PX4 instructions, and that ranges from everything from just like command line. You download the code, you follow their instructions, and you do a build. The make instructions. Now there are ways to add an IDE around that, but a lot of people just use Visual Studio Code. We have MCU Expresso that you can use as an IDE, but you'll have to change some settings to make it use the make compiler and get the debugger connected. There is I think MCU Expresso is another Eclipse-based IDE that could be used with this. So that's that area. And then for the Linux machine, it's regular Linux development. So you can actually compile on board on the board itself, so you don't have to do any cross compiling if you don't want to.
Nice. Oh, there's so much cool stuff here. I want to pull up all these links again as we wrap up here. Let's make sure. Okay, yeah. So we've got all this stuff to talk about. Okay, cool. So we're about at time, and let's do a little wrap up. So everything that we talked about, obviously, we're talking about NXP HoverGames. Number 3 is launching in September. We're gonna have this beautiful page up that we just gave you a sneak peek of, but the whole theme is land, sky, food supply. We've got the info on the HoverGames drone kit, which is linked from the main page. All this stuff is very accessible from the main NXP page that's up already, linked in the description below. Stuff about the IMX 8M Mini and the PX4.
8M Plus. 8M Plus is going to be the one that's on the new one. Yeah.
Ooh,
so if you want to see the chip capabilities, you want to look at 8M Plus on NXP.com.
Good to know. Then we've got, on the NXP page, also there's an overview of past challenges. You can find those on Hackster as well. Just go and look at past winners if you want to think about like what kinds of things you want to aim for in order to make a winning submission. But also, very excitingly, it's kind of collaborative. It's not that competitive. Like people are helping each other out. Look at EIQ for some machine learning stuff you could do. We talked about the MCU Expresso, but also a lot of it is going to be based on this PX4 stack. And anything else we should throw in there, Iain, before we wrap up?
I just want to encourage people to join and come up with creative ideas. We've had people that have gotten deep down into embedded C code and really esoteric areas. We have people that work up in Python or whatever, and we have people that are more even just hobbyists that have done really unique things, that have done great videos and have done very well in HoverGames as well. So we just want to encourage everybody to give it a shot and enjoy and come up with some creative ideas. So a lot of it's how well things are written up, as well as the technical aspects around it. So
cool. And of course you can follow Iain on Twitter. Follow Hackster and NXP as well to be notified about when the contest goes live. We'll also have it up on our contest page. And thank you everyone for joining, and thank you Iain for taking the time to talk to us about this exciting contest. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Take care.